Lectures, my wife and I knew each other our entire lives before we got married. It was a really sweet story of childhood friends who fell in love young and got married. When we started dating, we were each other's first kiss. She was the only woman that I had ever been with, and I thought the same with her. We were neighbors growing up, and we would often play together as children. I knew her family, and she knew mine. Everybody would always joke with us about how they knew we would be together forever. After we both graduated college, we got married and we started planning our future. We ended up buying a house for my uncle in our hometown so we could be close to our families. After a couple of years, we decided to start building a family together. We have 2 children, twins, and our life was perfect. Set out of the blue one evening, while we were watching a television show, my wife asked me if I regretted never being with another woman. I immediately told her that I didn't. I'll admit that there have been other women I've been attracted to. Sleeping with them had never crossed my mind though. I loved my wife very much, and she was the only one for me. I asked her about why she brought that up, and she told me that she had just been thinking about it. She explained that she was worried that I would get bored with her. She brushed it off then, and we continued watching our show. When my wife was a teenager, her aunt married a new man. I remember it being a big deal at the time, because her aunt went through a very bitter divorce and was staying at my wife's family home for quite some time. But when she married the man, she ended up moving out. The man that she married had 2 children of his own around our age, so it felt like we had 2 new friends in the neighborhood. Both were boys, and they were always kind of rowdy. One of them, let's call him Paul, has always been a bit of a problem child. Paul would have wild parties, he would get in trouble, and he slept around quite a bit. Despite all of that, he was always very fun to be around. He was the life of the party. In his adult years, he's calmed down quite a bit. He had a good job, and he was on the straight and narrow. His only major issue was his inability to remain in relationships. They always seemed to fail before they got too serious, and Paul would get pretty beat up about it. Paul was dating a girl that he really liked, and she ended up breaking up with him. He was hurt, so he reached out to my wife and me to talk. My wife, being the sensitive and caring woman that she was, went over to his house to make him dinner and listen to him. I didn't go because I didn't want to overwhelm him. I never expected that anything would happen between them. She came home later that night, and when I asked her about what happened, she was very evasive with her answers. She didn't seem to want to tell me about what Paul said to her. I thought it was fishy at the time, but again, I never thought she was doing anything inappropriate with him. Looking back, a lot of how she was acting after that night seemed like she felt guilty. She was being very generous to me with a lot of things. She kept cooking my favorite meals. She surprised me with small gifts, and she complimented me all the time. She was normally nice, but it was a little over the top. It felt almost like a child who broke something they shouldn't have been playing with, trying to make up for it. About a week after the night she visited Paul, she went back. She told me she was going to bring him some food just to make sure he was getting something healthy to eat. I offered to come along so I could check in on him, but my wife told me that it would be better if it was just her. I just assumed that it had something to do with him being in an emotional state, so I stayed back and put the kids to bed while she went to visit Paul. She came back a few hours later and told me that they had a long talk about everything. I didn't think that she was sleeping with him, but I thought something else was happening. The more time my wife was spending with him, the less it made sense. She came home one night and I asked her about what was really going on with Paul. She stuck to her story about Paul being very emotional after the breakup. I had offered to maybe go talk to him and give him some advice, but she told me that it probably wouldn't be much help. Regardless of what she said, I was worried about him. He was my family and my friend, and I wanted him to be okay. Over my lunch break at work the following day, I stopped by his house to check on him. At the time this was happening, my wife wasn't working. She was a stay-at-home mom and the kids were in school, so she had all day to do whatever she wanted to do. Her car was in the driveway when I arrived. She didn't tell me she was going to visit Paul that afternoon, so I was a little surprised. I approached the door, ready to ring the bell and pop in to see what was going on. Before I even touched it, I could hear noises right on the other side of the door. It sounded like they were having sex and my wife was being pinned up against the door. Sections, I was frozen in place. That was absolutely the last thing I expected to see. I couldn't even believe it. Don't know why I did it, but I ended up calling my wife on the other side of the door. As it seconds, I heard her phone go off, and I heard them both freeze for a moment while she looked at it and rejected the call. I heard some muffled conversation as Paul asked her if she was okay. My wife told him that it was just a little weird that I was calling in the middle of the day and that worried her. Paul made a joke about having something that could make her forget all about that. They started kissing again and they walked off somewhere else in the house. I stood outside for a few minutes contemplating what I wanted to do. I just caught my wife having sex with Paul. Paul was her cousin, not related by blood, but he was still very much a part of the family. It took me a few minutes before I put everything together. I knew right away that it was over between her and me. Staying our entire relationship, all of the years we knew each other, was going to be flushed down the toilet. I was going to divorce her and I was going to get proof of what happened before doing so. I knew Paul had a spare key hidden under a rock by his house, so I grabbed it and let myself in. I could hear the noises coming from the bedroom, and I made my way there. The door was wide open, and I pulled my phone out to take a quick video of both of them. After about 30 seconds passed, I knocked on the door and both of them turned around to look at me. They tried to cover themselves up and explain what was happening. The absolute funniest part of this was my wife chasing me out of the house, telling me she was only sleeping with him to help get his mind off the other woman. As if that made it okay, I was flabbergasted. I called off work for the rest of the day and sat in my car while I looked for a good divorce attorney online. I reached out to one and set up a meeting. While I waited for that, I went home and packed a bag to go stay at my parents' house while everything was figured out. I grabbed the kids from school and brought them along with me. My wife was blowing up my phone, but all I did was text her and let her know that I had the kids and they were safe, but I needed time away from her. The next time I saw her, I was serving her with papers. That just wasn't enough for me, though. She cheated on me with her own cousin, destroying our family. I wanted to get back at her for what she did. I thought about it quite a bit, and I realized that not many people would be understanding of their relationship. Again, he wasn't a blood relative, but he was still family. I crafted a heartfelt Facebook post explaining to everybody that after years of being together, my wife and I were divorcing. I explained what happened, sparing very little detail. A ton of family members commended me, saying that what she did was wrong, and they were telling me how sorry they were for what I went through. And later that same day, my wife and Paul both reached out to me and asked me to take the post down because they were getting very hateful messages from family and friends alike. I told them that I didn't have to take it down, and I didn't plan on it. But both my wife and her cousin were pretty much barred from every family function that we had. They lost a ton of friends, and pretty much everybody in our family shamed them for what they did. We lived in a small community and word travels fast, so when pretty much everybody in town heard that Paul slept with his cousin, it was a little more difficult for him to find new girlfriends. Both of them were humiliated by the post. My wife and I are divorced now, and I was awarded the house and all of our assets. I purchased all of our assets, so she has received no spousal support from me. Until she gets a job, I have primary custody of the kids. I can't believe you had to go through something like this. You trusted your wife with her kind heart to go and help her cousin through a rough time. It honestly sounds like it started that very first night she went over to his house. It definitely seems like she felt guilty about what she did initially, but when you didn't notice right away, she thought she was free to continue. Cheating in general is already bad enough, but cheating with your cousin is disgusting. You made it clear in the post that they weren't blood related, but I don't think that matters. They practically grew up together, and it seems like they were close as a family before that. I think sharing what they did with the rest of the family was the right thing to do. But the fact that the rest of the town shamed them for their actions was just a bonus to that. What they did was wrong from several different angles, and they should have been ashamed of it. I'm glad you were treated fairly during the divorce, and your children are with the parent that can support them. Divorce is hard on families, and I wish you guys nothing but the best moving forward. Now let's move on to our next story for today. My girlfriend and I were together for almost 3 years. I met her at work, and I had a huge crush on her before I asked her out. When I finally got the courage to do it, she told me she'd been waiting for me to ask her on a date. Everyone in the office thought we were the cutest couple. I thought so too. She was by far the best-looking woman I had dated up to that point. That's not saying other women I've dated weren't attractive. They were, but my girlfriend looked like she could be a model. She was absolutely stunning. Our company ended up going bankrupt, and there were mass layoffs throughout. Both my girlfriend and I were laid off. I found another job pretty quickly. That wasn't anywhere near as good as my old one, but there was room for growth, and it gave me health insurance. My girlfriend, on the other hand, was having a more difficult time. She didn't want to settle for something. She worked hard to get where she did in our company, and she felt like she deserved more. I started to notice when we would hang out that she had a lot of new things around her apartment. She had new clothes and shoes. She was buying expensive makeup and fancy home goods. She wasn't living like somebody who had lost their job, and I knew unemployment wasn't giving her that much either. I actually asked her about it, questioning how she was able to afford the lifestyle she was living. She told me that she had started freelancing online to make some extra income. About 2 years into our relationship, I asked her if we could move in together. Our lease was set to be renewed in a couple of months, and I thought it was a good time for us to take that next step, especially considering it would make both of our bills so much more manageable. Our bills were so much more affordable. She agreed, and I moved in a couple of months later. After we had the original conversation about her freelancing, I never thought much more about it. However, the first few weeks of living together, I noticed that she didn't do a lot of work. She always seemed to be hanging out in the bedroom or watching television. She was on her phone a lot, but I didn't think it was for work. I asked her about it again, not trying to be rude, but more so just questioning what it was exactly she did and how often she did it. She just told me that she got most of her work done early in the mornings and had the rest of the time free. One night, she and I were getting intimate, and she asked me if we could film it. My first instinct was that it was kind of hot, but I didn't want to be on camera. If the video of us ever got out for any reason, then my employers might see it, and it could be difficult for me to get a job and things like that. She ended up convincing me to do it by promising that my face or any other identifying parts of my body wouldn't be in the video. She seemed to want to, so eventually I agreed. We did our thing and recorded it. It wasn't something I had an interest in ever doing again. Everything was normal for the next few months. We'd gotten into a solid routine with each other, and there wasn't anything major going on. She came to me and told me about a conference for freelancers that she was interested in attending. There were going to be a lot of people in the industry that she could network with to get some new clients. I thought it was a great idea. She already made a pretty good living for herself through her work, and the ability to expand that business was promising. She bought her ticket and went on her way when the time came. It was a weekend-long conference, so I was alone in the apartment for about 3 days. One night I was feeling particularly alone. SATs and a week were families. I remembered that she recorded us a few months prior, so I grabbed her camera to look for that footage. I hooked the camera up to my computer and opened the video folder to grab the video and put the camera back. I saw that there were hundreds of other videos on the camera. I was curious, so I clicked on one. It was a video of her dancing in a room and stripping. There were countless other videos of her all over the apartment. All of the videos were extremely sexual. I was really curious about why she had them. I had a suspicion about it right away, but I needed some confirmation. I grabbed her laptop and looked through it to confirm if she was camming or not. She had a bookmark folder in her browser called Work, and when I clicked on it, there were several cam girl websites linked. Of course, her information was saved, and I could log in and see everything she was posting and everything she was saying with all of her fans. Her account was relatively new, it seemed, but she had some very dedicated followers. There were dozens of direct messages that hadn't been read yet from some of her fans. They were saying very obscene things to her and commenting on her body and things like that. She was role-playing with them to get tips. Actually, one of the videos on her page caught my eye because it was the video she had taken with me. I was immediately panicked knowing that there was a video of me on the internet. There were a ton of comments on the video where the men said things like, "I wish that was me." Not long after that video was posted, she posted something about a raffle she was holding for a lucky fan to be able to sleep with her. I felt like I was going to throw up when I read that. I was sick to my stomach. Her job as a freelancer was a lie. She uploaded the video that we had taken together without my consent, and now she was likely on her way to sleep with some random man from the internet. I looked through everything I could on the accounts, and I figured out that she basically held a raffle where men could buy tickets to have a chance to sleep with her. She had about 100 entrants in this raffle. As in her emails, I was able to confirm that she was in fact on her way to sleep with the fan that won the raffle. She was going to film it to post online. My girlfriend called me while I was looking at her accounts, and I answered. I was in shock, so I didn't know what to say to her. She asked me if she left her laptop behind. She was worried she lost it on the flight. I told her that it was there. Had she not forgotten it, I might not have known about what happened. It was almost like fate wanted me to figure out what was going on. I knew that I wasn't going to be with her after this. I'm a pretty liberal person, and if she had told me that she had this camming site, I might have understood. I would never have been happy with it, but it would have been something we could have talked about. But she posted a video of me on it, and she was going to cheat on me with a man who won a raffle to sleep with her. There was no way in hell I was going to continue this relationship with her. I called one of my buddies and briefly explained what was going on and told him that I needed a place to crash for a few days. I got as much of my stuff out of the apartment as I could. I slept on it overnight thinking about what I was going to do after finding everything out. A train of my woke up in the morning, I checked her page out of curiosity. There was a video posted of her with another man. I couldn't stomach watching it, so I just closed it. I was beyond pissed that she had done that. Not only was it cheating, it was irresponsible. She didn't know where that man had been. He could have given her any kind of steal, and she didn't consider that. I decided that I was going to take the sights away from her. She had amassed quite the following, and it looked like it was only growing after she slept with the fan. I had an idea, and I didn't know exactly how feasible it would be because sites like these don't always seem to care, but I reported her as being underage. I hoped that it would get the sites taken down so she would be banned from them. I reported that on all of the sites that I knew about. She messaged me asking where I was. I told her that I knew about her real job and what she had just gone to do. She tried to explain it to me. She told me that she needed more followers and that sleeping with a fan was a good way to get them. She'd read articles about other cam girls doing similar things and gaining tens of thousands of followers. I wasn't interested in an explanation. She cheated on me, and that's the only way I looked at it. I also shamed her for putting the video that I barely wanted to do online. I told her that it was over and I would be getting all of my things from the apartment as soon as I found another one. She begged me for a second chance and told me that I was more important to her than any of the other stuff. I just didn't care. We broke up, and I found another apartment a few weeks later. The last time I ever saw her was when I was moving my furniture out. Out of curiosity, I checked the websites that she had her accounts on, and I saw that 3 of them were deleted. I was glad to see that it was the 3 where she had the most followers. She still had 2 other accounts, and I knew that she would probably regain the traction she had on the other websites, but even if it was a temporary setback, I was happy with it. Your girlfriend clearly didn't take what you would think about it into consideration at all. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't have had any of the websites that she did. I think it's very messed up that she posted the video that she'd taken with you on her sites. You didn't give any consent for her to do that. And by the way, it seems she almost coerced you into making the video to begin with. That in itself is a huge breach of your trust, and I think she showed her true colors with that. Your girlfriend trying to excuse cheating on you with some random fan as a business-savvy marketing move is ridiculous. Cheating is cheating regardless of the circumstances. She sold raffle tickets to sleep with another man. I agree, it is very irresponsible to do that. Unless she ran a full background check, screened him for STDs, and had a bodyguard present while she was there, it just seems incredibly unsafe. From what you described, it doesn't even sound like she really needed a huge bump in followers. You did the right thing by leaving her when you found out. It definitely seems like she didn't have much respect for you as a person because of how often she lied to you. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.